Admiral Marcus Kane stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the stars through the massive view screen when the message arrived. The communication officer looked up from his station with worry in his eyes and said the Galactic Council wanted to speak with him right away. Marcus had been expecting this call for weeks, but he still felt his stomach tighten as the alien faces appeared on the screen. The Zephyrian High Commander Veltar dominated the display with his tall silver form and glowing red eyes that seemed to burn with hatred. Behind him stood representatives from 12 other alien species, but Marcus could see they were all afraid of the Zephyrian leader. Veltar spoke in his mechanical voice that sounded like grinding metal and told Marcus that humanity had been judged unfit for galactic society. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward from her position near the communication station. As Earth's top diplomat, she had spent years trying to build good relationships with alien races, but now she could see all her work falling apart. She asked Veltar what crimes humanity had committed and why they were being treated this way. The alien commander laughed with a sound like breaking glass and said humans were a plague that spread chaos wherever they went. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm when he asked what the council planned to do. Veltar smiled with too many sharp teeth and announced that all human space would be declared forbidden territory. No human ship would be allowed to leave their current borders, and any vessel that tried would be destroyed without warning. The quarantine zone would extend far beyond human settlements to include star systems that Earth needed for future expansion. Dr. Alex Turner had been listening from the science station, and now he moved closer to Marcus with data tablets in his hands. He whispered that the Forbidden Zone included 17 star systems with planets suitable for human colonies and mining operations. Without access to those resources, humanity would be trapped in their small corner of space with no room to grow. Alex's face was pale as he explained that Earth's population was growing too fast for their current worlds to support. Captain Lisa Morgan's voice crackled over the communication system from her scout ship Meridian stationed near the outer rim of human space. She reported massive Zephyrian fleet movements along what would become the quarantine boundary. Hundreds of automated defense platforms were being moved into position at every jump point that led into human territory. Each platform carried enough firepower to destroy a human battleship, and they were all linked to a central command network. Elena tried one more time to negotiate with the Alien Council, asking if there was any way to avoid this quarantine. She offered to sign treaties limiting human expansion or to accept alien observers on human worlds. Veltar waved his hand dismissively and said the decision was final. The vote had already been taken, and all council members agreed that humans must be contained before they could spread their violence to civilized space. Marcus asked how long humanity had to prepare, and Veltar told him the quarantine would begin in exactly 72 hours. After that time, any human ship crossing the boundary would be vaporized instantly. The alien commander seemed to enjoy delivering this threat, and his red eyes glowed brighter as he spoke. He ended the transmission by saying that perhaps in a few hundred years, humanity might evolve enough to rejoin galactic society. The bridge fell silent after the alien faces disappeared from the screen. Marcus looked around at his crew and saw fear mixed with anger in their expressions. These were some of Earth's best military officers, but they all knew that humanity's entire fleet numbered less than 2,000 ships, while the Zephyrian Empire alone controlled 10,000 vessels. The odds seemed impossible, but Marcus had not survived 30 years in space by giving up when things looked bad. He ordered his communication officer to contact President Jake Collins on Earth immediately. Within minutes, the president's tired face appeared on a secure channel, and Marcus briefed him on the council's ultimatum. Collins listened without interruption, then asked for Marcus's honest assessment of their military options. The admiral told him that direct confrontation would be suicide, but surrender was not acceptable either. Elena suggested they try to contact other alien races privately to see if any of them opposed the quarantine. She believed some of the smaller species might be willing to help humanity if they could do so secretly. Dr. Turner added that his research teams had been working on several experimental technologies that might give human forces some advantages, despite being outnumbered. Captain Morgan reported from the Meridian that Zephyrian patrol ships were already testing human border defenses. They would approach human outposts and scan them thoroughly before withdrawing. But the message was clear. The aliens wanted humans to know they were being watched and that resistance would be futile. Several colony governors had already sent messages asking if they should evacuate their populations to safer locations. President Collins made his decision quickly and told Marcus to begin emergency preparations for what he called Operation Defiance. All human military forces would be placed on highest alert, and civilian populations near the quarantine boundary would be relocated to more secure systems. Collins also authorized Dr. Turner to accelerate his experimental weapons programs, regardless of cost or safety concerns. Marcus gathered his senior staff in the Liberty's briefing room and began planning humanity's response to the alien ultimatum. They had less than 3 days to prepare for what might be the greatest challenge their species had ever faced. The Admiral looked at each officer and told them that history would judge them by how they responded to this crisis. They could either accept imprisonment and slow extinction, or fight for their right to exist among the stars. Elena worked frantically to send secret messages to alien contacts she had cultivated over the years. Most did not respond, but a few sent coded replies suggesting they might provide information about Zephyrian fleet movements. Dr. Turner coordinated with research stations across human space to share data on experimental technologies that might help level the odds against superior alien forces. As the deadline approached, Marcus stood once again on the Liberty's bridge, watching Zephyrian ships take positions along the quarantine line. He knew that in a few hours those ships would have orders to kill any human who dared to cross an invisible line in space. The Admiral touched the communication controls and sent a message to every human ship and colony telling them that their species would not go quietly into the darkness that alien powers had chosen for them. 3 months had passed since the Zephyrian Empire sealed humanity behind their invisible prison walls, and Commander Ryan Torres was tired of waiting for politicians to find a peaceful solution. He stood in the cargo bay of the experimental stealth ship Phantom, watching his team load equipment for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. The ship looked nothing like a normal human vessel, with its angular black hull covered in strange panels that Dr. Maya Patel claimed could bend light around them. Maya worked frantically at a portable computer terminal, making final adjustments to the cloaking system she had designed. Her hair was messy from 3 days without sleep, and her eyes were red from staring at equations that most people could not even read. She told Ryan that the cloak would hide them from Zephyrian sensors for maybe 2 hours before the power cells burned out. After that, they would be visible to every alien ship within 100,000 kilometers. Ryan's mission was simple in theory, but deadly in practice. He would take the Phantom through the quarantine line to see what the Zephyrians were doing in forbidden space. Human intelligence had detected strange energy readings from systems that used to contain thriving colonies, but no one knew what was causing them. The Admiral needed to know if those signals meant the aliens were building weapons, or if something worse was happening. The Phantom's crew consisted of only 12 people, including Ryan, because the stealth systems took up most of the ship's internal space. Lieutenant Jake Fisher served as pilot, and he had more experience flying in dangerous situations than anyone else in the human fleet. Sergeant Kate Miller handled the ship's defensive systems, while Dr. Maya Patel monitored the cloaking device that would keep them alive. They launched from a hidden base in an asteroid field far from any major shipping lanes where Zephyrian patrols might detect them. The journey to the quarantine boundary took 6 hours, and Ryan spent most of that time studying intelligence reports about alien ship movements. The Zephyrians had positioned their defense platforms in a perfect grid pattern that left no gaps for normal ships to slip through. Maya activated the cloaking system as they approached the first line of alien sensors, and Ryan watched the ship's hull shimmer like heat waves before becoming completely invisible. The sensation was strange because he could still see everything inside the Phantom. But looking out the window showed only empty space where their ship should be. Maya warned everyone to speak quietly because sound dampeners were not perfect, and alien sensors might pick up unusual noise patterns. Jake guided the invisible ship between 2 massive Zephyrian defense platforms that bristled with weapon arrays capable of destroying a human battleship. Ryan could see alien crew members moving around inside the stations through transparent sections, but none of them showed any sign of detecting the Phantom. The cloaking system was working perfectly, but Maya's power readings showed they were burning. through energy reserves faster than expected. Once they crossed into forbidden territory, Ryan was shocked by what they found. The Kepler system had once housed 2 million human colonists on 3 different worlds, but now only one planet remained, intact. The other 2 had been completely strip-mined with their surfaces carved away to reveal the metallic cores beneath. Massive Zephyrian harvesting ships moved like mechanical insects across the ruined worlds, gathering every useful mineral they could find. Jake piloted the Phantom closer to the remaining inhabited planet, and Ryan felt sick when he saw what the aliens had done. The human cities were gone, and in their place stood geometric alien structures that looked like crystal growths spreading across the landscape. Zephyrian atmospheric processors were changing the air to suit alien biology, while force fields kept the surviving human population trapped in small reservation areas. Maya's sensors detected something even more disturbing when they scanned the orbital space around the planet. The Zephyrians were building massive fortress stations using materials stolen from human worlds. Each station was larger than anything humanity had ever constructed, and they were positioned to control every approach to the system. Ryan realized the aliens were not just stealing resources but were building permanent bases in what had been human space. The cloaking system began to flicker as power levels dropped below safe limits, and Maya warned that they had maybe 30 minutes before becoming visible to alien sensors. Ryan ordered Jake to move the ship to the next system on their route, but they were intercepted by a Zephyrian patrol that seemed to appear from nowhere. The alien ships moved in perfect formation like they were controlled by a single mind, and their sensors swept space in overlapping patterns. Kate reported that the patrol was using some kind of advanced detection method that was getting closer to finding them despite the cloaking device. Maya worked desperately to boost power to the stealth systems, but warned that pushing them too hard might cause a complete failure. Ryan had to choose between aborting the mission or risking discovery by continuing deeper into forbidden space. He decided to press on because the information they were gathering was too important to lose. The Phantom slipped past the patrol ships and entered the Darwin system, where they found something that made Ryan's blood run cold. The Zephyrians had built a massive shipyard in orbit around the system's star using stolen human technology combined with their own advanced methods. Hundreds of new warships were under construction, and each one was larger and more heavily armed than existing Zephyrian vessels. Maya's equipment detected energy signatures that suggested the aliens were not just building normal ships but were developing some kind of superweapon. The readings showed power levels that could threaten entire star systems, and Ryan knew this information had to reach Admiral Kane immediately. Unfortunately, the cloaking system was failing faster than Maya had predicted, and alien sensors were starting to detect anomalous readings in their area. Jake began emergency acceleration procedures as the first Zephyrian ships turned toward their position. The Phantom became visible just as enemy weapons opened fire, and only Jake's incredible piloting skills kept them from being vaporized instantly. Kate returned fire with their limited weapons while Maya tried to restore the cloaking system, but the power cells were completely drained. The running battle lasted for 20 minutes as Jake used every trick he knew to keep them ahead of the pursuing aliens. The Phantom was faster than Zephyrian ships, but not by much, and their enemies had superior firepower. Kate managed to disable one pursuing vessel with a lucky shot to its engine section, but 3 more ships joined the chase from different directions. Ryan made the decision to use their emergency jump drive, even though Maya warned that the system had not been properly tested. They needed to escape with their intelligence data, or the entire mission would be worthless. The jump drive activated just as Zephyrian weapons were about to destroy them, and the Phantom disappeared into hyperspace, leaving very confused alien pursuit ships behind. They emerged from hyperspace near the asteroid base where Admiral Kane was waiting for their report. Maya's cloaking system was completely burned out and would need weeks to repair, but the intelligence they had gathered was worth the risk. Ryan briefed the Admiral on what they had seen, including the strip mining operations and the massive shipyard that threatened all of human space. Kane listened to the report with growing anger and told Ryan that his mission had provided the justification needed for humanity's next move. The Zephyrians were not content to simply quarantine humans, but were actively stealing their worlds and building weapons for some larger plan. The admiral activated emergency protocols and sent coded messages to every human military commander telling them to prepare for operations that would take the war directly to their alien enemies. Admiral Nina Walsh stood on the bridge of her new flagship Retribution, watching Liberation fleets prepare for the largest offensive operation in human history. The past year of war had transformed her from a single ship captain into the commander of humanity's most successful battle group. Her tactical innovations had been copied throughout the human fleet, and her reputation struck fear into alien commanders across the galaxy. The Retribution was humanity's first true battleship, built using technology captured from destroyed Zephyrian vessels. Dr. Maya Patel had supervised the integration of alien systems with human engineering, and the result was a ship that combined the best features of both technologies. Its quantum communication arrays allowed instant coordination with other human vessels, while its adaptive armor could evolve during combat to counter enemy weapons. Nina's target was the Arcturus system, where Zephyrian forces had established a major supply depot feeding their invasion fleets. Intelligence reports suggested the facility contained enough weapons and fuel to support alien operations for another 2 years. Destroying it would force the Zephyrians to retreat from several conquered systems, and might convince other alien species that the Empire was not as invincible as they claimed. Commander Jake Fisher led the escort fighter wings from his new carrier. Horizon and had become the most feared pilot in human space. His swarm tactics had evolved into an art form that confused and terrified alien commanders, who could not understand how small human fighters could destroy ships 100 times their size. Jake's pilots moved like a living organism that flowed around enemy formations and struck at weak points with deadly precision. Dr. Alex Turner monitored the battle from his command center on Earth, using quantum sensors that could track events across multiple star systems simultaneously. His artificial intelligence networks had grown increasingly sophisticated and now provided tactical advice that human commanders found invaluable. The AI could analyze millions of possible battle outcomes in seconds and suggest strategies that no biological mind could have conceived. Engineer Kate Miller had been promoted to head of fleet engineering, and her innovations were transforming human warships into something the galaxy had never seen before. Her latest breakthrough was the Ghost Ship protocol that allowed damaged vessels to continue fighting, using automated systems controlled by quantum AI. Ships that should have been destroyed kept appearing in battles like mechanical zombies that refused to die. The Liberation fleet consisted of 200 human vessels supported by supply ships carrying experimental weapons and repair systems. It was the largest force humanity had ever assembled, but would still be outnumbered 3-1 by the Zephyrian defenders at Arcturus. Nina planned to use speed and coordination to overcome the numerical disadvantage just as human forces had done in dozens of previous engagements. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Peterson had expanded his intelligence operations to include contacts within alien military units who were becoming increasingly disillusioned with Zephyrian leadership. Several species that had joined the Empire voluntarily were now questioning their loyalty as human forces demonstrated that the supposed masters of the galaxy could be defeated. Secret communications suggested that some alien commanders might be willing to switch sides. Commander Ryan Torres coordinated special operations teams that had been infiltrating Zephyrian facilities for months, preparing for the Liberation offensive. His operatives had planted explosives in key installations and established communication networks that would allow human forces to coordinate with resistance groups on occupied worlds. The aliens were about to discover that their conquered territories were far from secure. The attack on Arcturus began with Ryan's team sabotaging sensor arrays and communication relays throughout the system. Zephyrian commanders found themselves blind and unable to coordinate their defense as human strike forces emerged from hyperspace at multiple points. The aliens had expected a frontal assault, but instead faced coordinated attacks from directions they had not thought to defend. Jake Fisher's fighter wings swept through the outer system, destroying automated defense platforms, while larger human ships engaged the main Zephyrian fleet. His pilots used new tactics that made their formations look like natural phenomena until they suddenly revealed themselves as deadly weapons. Several alien commanders reported being attacked by energy storms before realizing they were facing coordinated fighter strikes. Nina commanded the main battle from the Retribution and watched her tactical display show the systematic destruction of Zephyrian defenses. Her ships moved like dancers, performing a complex routine with each vessel, playing its part in a larger pattern that the aliens could not predict or counter. The ghost ship protocols proved their worth as damaged human vessels continued fighting long after they should have been destroyed. The Zephyrian commander at Arcturus was a veteran officer named Kethvar, who had never lost a battle in 30 years of service. He watched his supposedly impregnable defenses crumble under human assault and began to understand why High Commander Veltar's invasion had stalled. These humans fought with a creativity and determination that alien military doctrine could not counter. Kate Miller's engineering teams had developed new weapons specifically for this battle, including plasma torpedoes that could adapt their attack patterns in flight. The torpedoes would analyze enemy shields and armor, then reconfigure themselves to maximize damage. Zephyrian point defense systems found themselves unable to stop weapons that changed their approach methods during flight. Dr. Turner's AI networks achieved something unprecedented during the Arcturus battle by successfully predicting every major Zephyrian tactical decision. The artificial intelligence had learned to think like alien commanders and could anticipate their responses to changing battlefield conditions. Human forces were able to counter enemy moves before they were even implemented. The liberation of Arcturus took only 6 hours despite Zephyrian numerical superiority and left the alien supply depot in ruins. More importantly, the victory demonstrated that human forces could now defeat major Zephyrian installations without suffering crippling losses. News of the success spread throughout the galaxy and encouraged resistance movements on other occupied worlds. Nina received reports that alien commanders throughout the Empire were requesting reassignment rather than face human forces in battle. The reputation of the Liberation Fleet had grown to legendary proportions, and some Zephyrian officers preferred court-martial to the possibility of encountering Admiral Walsh in combat. Fear was becoming humanity's most effective weapon against their supposedly superior enemies. Ryan's intelligence networks reported growing dissent within the Galactic Council as member species began to question their support for Zephyrian policies. The Centauri Collective had formally withdrawn from the Alliance while the Vegan Republic was secretly providing intelligence to human forces. The empire that had seemed unshakable 2 years ago was beginning to fracture under pressure from unexpected human resistance. Jake Fisher's pilots had become celebrities throughout human space, and their tactics were being studied by military academies on every human world. His memoir about swarm combat techniques became required reading for all fighter pilots, and his innovations were being adapted for use by larger vessels. The young pilot who had started the war-flying reconnaissance missions was now shaping the future of space combat. Sam Peterson's analysis suggested that Zephyrian morale was approaching a breaking point as their invasion forces continued to suffer defeats despite overwhelming numerical advantages. Captured alien communications revealed growing criticism of High Command strategy, and some unit commanders were openly questioning orders. The Empire's rigid military structure was becoming a liability in the face of human adaptability. Dr. Patel's quantum communication networks had evolved into something approaching telepathy between human ships, allowing unprecedented coordination in battle. Entire fleets could change formation instantly without verbal commands, while alien forces still relied on slower traditional communication methods. This advantage was becoming decisive in large-scale engagements where split-second timing determined victory or defeat. The war was entering a new phase as human forces transitioned from desperate defense to aggressive offense. The Liberation Fleet had proven that Zephyrian strongholds could be captured, and their forces could be defeated in direct combat. Admiral Walsh began planning even more ambitious operations that would carry the war into the heart of alien territory and demonstrate that humanity would never again accept imprisonment among the stars. Veltar received reports of the Arcturus disaster while reviewing casualty figures that showed his invasion forces had lost nearly half their strength in just 18 months of fighting. The humans were no longer simply defending their territory, but were actively pushing into space the Empire considered its own. For the first time in Zephyrian history, their military supremacy was being seriously challenged by what they had dismissed as primitive aliens. High Commander Veltar stood in the center of his flagship's command bridge surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of 3,000 Zephyrian warships. His red eyes burned with fury as he watched reports flow in about human raids on alien outposts and supply convoys. The inferior species had dared to strike back against their betters, and now they would pay the ultimate price for their arrogance. The massive dreadnought Dominion served as Veltar's mobile command center and was larger than most human space stations. Its weapons could crack a planet's crust and its shields could withstand the combined firepower of an entire human battle group. Around the Dominion floated the greatest armada ever assembled by the Zephyrian Empire, with enough ships to overwhelm any defense that humanity could mount. Veltar activated his fleet communication system and addressed his commanders with words that carried the weight of imperial authority. He told them that the time for patience was over, and that humanity would be exterminated completely within the next 30 days. Every human world would be sterilized and every human ship would be destroyed until nothing remained of the species that had dared to defy galactic order. Admiral Marcus Kane received the first reports of the alien invasion while standing in the war room deep beneath Earth's surface. The massive displays showed red symbols representing Zephyrian fleets pouring across the quarantine boundary at 17 different points. Each alien formation contained more ships than humanity's entire navy, and they were all heading directly toward major population centers. Captain Nina Walsh commanded the heavy cruiser Defiance from her position near the Centauri colonies when the alien armada appeared on her sensors. She had expected the Zephyrians to eventually retaliate for human raids, but the size of their response was beyond anything she had imagined. Her single ship faced a battle group of 50 alien vessels, but she refused to retreat and abandon the 3 million civilians depending on her protection. Nina ordered her crew to battle stations and began implementing the new tactics that human forces had developed during months of hit-and-run attacks. Instead of meeting the aliens in direct combat, she used the Defiance's superior speed and maneuverability to strike at enemy ships from unexpected angles. Her weapons targeted specific weak points that human intelligence had identified on Zephyrian vessels. Dr. Alex Turner worked frantically in his underground laboratory on Earth coordinating the deployment of humanity's secret weapons. His quantum-enhanced artificial intelligence systems had been installed on every major human warship and were already proving their worth in the opening battles. The AI could process battlefield information faster than any biological brain and could predict enemy movements with startling accuracy. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Peterson analyzed data from the first engagements and discovered something that gave him hope despite the overwhelming odds. Zephyrian ships were incredibly powerful, but they all followed predictable patterns based on their automated systems. Human crews could adapt and improvise in ways that alien computers could not match, and this flexibility was already paying dividends in combat. Commander Ryan Torres led a squadron of stealth ships in deep strike missions against Zephyrian command vessels. His pilots used modified cloaking devices to approach enemy flagships undetected and then unleashed concentrated firepower against their communication arrays. Without proper coordination, the alien formations became confused and vulnerable to human counterattacks. The battle for the Centauri system lasted 3 days and became the first major test of human resolve against Zephyrian might. Captain Walsh used every trick she had learned to keep the Defiance fighting, despite being vastly outnumbered. Her crew worked with desperate efficiency to keep weapons firing and shields operational, while alien plasma beams turned space around them into a deadly light show. Jake Fisher had been promoted to commander after his success with the Phantom, and now led a wing of fighters equipped with experimental weapons. His pilots flew in swarm formations that confused Zephyrian targeting computers and allowed them to destroy enemy ships many times larger than their own vessels. The aliens had never faced tactics like these, and their rigid battle doctrines could not adapt quickly enough. Engineer Kate Miller coordinated defensive operations from the Fortress Moon orbiting New Geneva and watched her automated defense systems engage waves of Zephyrian attack drones. Her innovations in adaptive shield technology allowed human installations to absorb far more damage than aliens expected. Each hit taught the shields how to better deflect the next attack, creating a learning defense network. Dr. Maya Patel had recovered from her injuries during the Phantom mission and now worked with quantum communication arrays that gave human forces their greatest advantage. Her breakthrough allowed instant coordination between ships separated by light years, while Zephyrian fleets still relied on slower relay systems. Human commanders could react to changing situations faster than their alien counterparts. The siege of Earth began when Veltar's personal fleet arrived in the solar system, expecting to find a broken and demoralized enemy. Instead, they encountered layered defenses that had been prepared for months using intelligence gathered from covert missions. Orbital platforms launched swarms of guided missiles while hidden asteroid bases revealed themselves to strike at alien flanks. Marcus Kane commanded the defense of humanity's homeworld from the war room, and felt a mixture of pride and terror as he watched his species fight for survival. The tactical displays showed human ships dancing around much larger alien vessels like wolves attacking a herd of massive prey animals. Individual human ships were destroyed regularly, but they always managed to inflict disproportionate damage before dying. The Zephyrian commander was shocked by the intensity of human resistance and began to realize that his intelligence reports had seriously underestimated their capabilities. Veltar had expected a quick victory, followed by systematic extermination, but instead found himself fighting a war of attrition against an enemy that refused to surrender. His carefully planned invasion was turning into a grinding campaign that consumed ships and resources. Nina Walsh had survived the Centauri battle, and now led a task force of damaged ships in desperate defense of the outer colonies. Her crew had become experts at fighting while wounded, and her engineers had learned to repair battle damage in the middle of combat. The Defiance looked like a flying wreck, but its weapons still fired and its crew still fought with unbroken determination. Ryan Torres coordinated special operations across 12 star systems, as human forces proved that size and technology were not always decisive factors in warfare. His teams captured intact Zephyrian vessels and used them to sow confusion in alien formations. Enemy ships would suddenly turn on their allies or broadcast false orders that disrupted carefully planned attacks. Sam Peterson's analysis revealed that Zephyrian fleet commanders were becoming increasingly frustrated with their inability to achieve quick victory. Their reports to high command showed growing respect for human tactical abilities, and some alien officers were beginning to question whether complete extermination was actually possible. The inferior species was proving to be far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. As the invasion entered its second month, both sides had suffered heavy casualties, but the strategic situation was beginning to favor humanity, despite their numerical disadvantage. Zephyrian fleets were spread thin across dozens of systems, while human forces concentrated their strength at critical points. The aliens had expected a short war, but were instead facing a prolonged conflict that favored their more adaptable enemies. Veltar stood once again on his flagship's bridge, but now the holographic displays showed red zones where his forces had been pushed back by determined human resistance. The species he had dismissed as primitive plague carriers was systematically dismantling his invasion through superior tactics and unbreakable will. For the first time in his military career, the High Commander began to consider the possibility that his empire might not be invincible after all. High Commander Veltar stood in the command center of his fortress world, watching the final armada of the Zephyrian Empire prepare for battle. 3 years of war against humanity had cost him 2/3 of his fleet and the loyalty of half his alien allies. The species he had tried to exterminate was now approaching his home system with forces that included ships from a dozen different alien races who had grown to respect human determination and courage. Admiral Marcus Kane commanded the combined Liberation fleet from his flagship Vengeance as it emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyr system. The massive formation included 500 human warships supported by vessels from the Centauri Collective and the Vegan Republic, along with volunteer units from smaller species who had suffered under Zephyrian domination. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history and represented a new era of cooperation between species. Admiral Nina Walsh led the advanced squadrons aboard the Retribution and felt a mixture of pride and sadness as she watched alien ships fighting alongside human vessels. The war had cost humanity millions of lives, but it had also forged alliances that would have been impossible under peaceful conditions. Former enemies now served as trusted partners united by their shared struggle against Zephyrian tyranny. Commander Jake Fisher coordinated fighter operations from his carrier Horizon and marveled at how much his tactics had evolved since the early days of the war. His pilots now flew in mixed formations with alien crews who had learned human swarm techniques and adapted them to their own capabilities. The sight of human and alien fighters moving as one organism would have been unthinkable when the quarantine was first declared. Dr. Alex Turner monitored the battle preparations from his quantum command center and watched his artificial intelligence networks coordinate with alien computer systems in ways that should have been impossible. The AI had grown beyond its original programming and now possessed something approaching intuition that allowed it to understand alien thought patterns. This breakthrough would prove decisive in the coming engagement. Engineer Kate Miller supervised the final preparations of humanity's most advanced warships from her position in the fleet engineering section. Her ghost ship protocols had been shared with alien allies and were now standard equipment throughout the combined fleet. The technology that had started as a desperate measure to keep damaged ships fighting had evolved into a tactical advantage that surprised enemies and inspired allies. Commander Ryan Torres led combined special operations teams that included the best infiltration specialists from multiple species working together for the first time in galactic history. His teams had been operating in Zephyrian space for months preparing for this final assault and had established contact with resistance groups on every major world in the Empire. The aliens were about to discover that their conquered territories were filled with enemies. High Commander Veltar activated his remaining defense systems and prepared to make his final stand on the world that had been the center of Zephyrian power for over 1,000 years. His fortress contained the most advanced weapons his species had ever developed, but he knew that technology alone would not be enough to defeat the coalition arrayed against him. The humans had taught the galaxy that determination and creativity could overcome any material advantage. The Battle of Zephyr Prime began with Ryan's team sabotaging planetary defense networks, while the combined fleet engaged Veltar's remaining armada in the outer system. Human ships moved with their characteristic unpredictability, while their alien allies provided firepower and support in perfectly coordinated formations. The combination of human innovation and alien discipline created a fighting force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Jake Fisher's mixed fighter wings performed maneuvers that defied conventional understanding of space combat as human pilots taught alien crews how to think like a swarm organism. The formations flowed around enemy positions like liquid mercury, then suddenly crystallized into deadly attack patterns that overwhelmed Zephyrian defenses. Several alien aces who had once been enemies now flew as Jake's wingmen with complete trust and mutual respect. Dr. Turner's quantum AI networks achieved their ultimate evolution during the final battle by successfully predicting and countering every Zephyrian strategy simultaneously. The artificial intelligence had learned to think not just like humans or individual alien species, but like the combined consciousness of the entire coalition fleet. Enemy commanders found themselves facing an opponent that seemed to know their intentions before they formed them. Nina Walsh led the assault on Veltar's fortress world with a determination forged by 3 years of desperate fighting. Her tactical skills had been refined by constant combat, and her ships moved with precision that amazed even veteran alien commanders. The Retribution carved through enemy formations like a sword-cutting silk, while its crew worked with the efficiency of a perfectly tuned machine. Kate Miller's engineering innovations reached their peak during the final engagement, as damaged ships throughout the combined fleet continued fighting long after they should have been destroyed. The ghost ship protocols had evolved into something approaching mechanical resurrection that allowed destroyed vessels to rise again and continue the battle. Zephyrian forces found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to stay dead. Sam Peterson coordinated intelligence operations that revealed growing panic within Zephyrian command structures as their supposedly impregnable defenses crumbled under coordinated assault. Intercepted communications showed alien officers abandoning their posts while others openly defied orders from their superiors. The rigid military hierarchy that had once been the Empire's strength was collapsing under pressure. Veltar watched, his final reserves being systematically destroyed by an enemy he had underestimated from the beginning. The humans had not simply survived his attempt at extermination, but had grown stronger through adversity and forged alliances that were reshaping galactic civilization. His transmission to Marcus Kane contained something no Zephyrian commander had ever offered before: a formal surrender. The High Commander's final message acknowledged that humanity had achieved something his empire never could: true innovation born from diversity and cooperation rather than conquest and domination. He admitted that the war had been lost not through superior numbers or technology, but through the systematic dismantling of Zephyrian doctrine by human adaptability and the courage of their allies. Marcus Kane accepted the surrender aboard his flagship while representatives from dozens of alien species witnessed the end of an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. The quarantine zone that was supposed to contain humanity had indeed become a graveyard, but not for the species the Zephyrians had tried to imprison. Instead, it held the remnants of a military force that had learned too late to respect their supposedly inferior enemies. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez addressed the reformed Galactic Council from its new headquarters on Earth as representatives from over 50 species gathered to establish a new framework for interstellar cooperation. The old system based on domination and fear was being replaced by one founded on mutual respect and the recognition that diversity was strength rather than weakness. President Jake Collins signed the Terran Accords that established humanity, not as conquerors seeking revenge, but as protectors of smaller species who sought freedom from tyrannical oppression. The document created a new model for galactic civilization, where strength was measured not by the ability to destroy, but by the capacity to defend those who could not defend themselves. The transformation of former Zephyrian space proceeded rapidly, as human engineers worked alongside alien specialists to rebuild worlds that had been damaged during the war. The fortress stations that had once enforced imperial domination were converted into research facilities and trade centers that promoted cooperation between species. Children from dozens of different worlds played together in parks built on the ruins of military installations. Nina Walsh retired from active service and established the first integrated military academy, where human and alien officers would train together using tactics developed during the Liberation War. Her memoirs became required reading for military leaders throughout the galaxy, and her innovations in cooperative combat techniques influenced strategic thinking for generations. Jake Fisher founded a civilian pilot training program that taught former enemies to work together using the swarm techniques he had pioneered. His method spread throughout the galaxy, as species that had been isolated by imperial policy learned to communicate and coordinate in ways previously thought impossible. The pilot who had started the war flying alone now led formation exercises with crews from 20 different worlds. Dr. Turner's artificial intelligence networks became the foundation for a galaxy-wide communication system that allowed instant coordination between worlds separated by thousands of light years. The quantum consciousness he had created evolved into something that served all species equally and helped prevent future conflicts through improved understanding and cooperation. The final monument to humanity's struggle was erected in the Zephyr system where the last battle had been fought.